English for teaching purposes. Giving examples.
Example, said Edmund Burke, is the school of mankind, and they will learn at no other. Bit of an exaggeration if you ask me, but it's true that examples are an extremely helpful learning and teaching strategy. Lecturers know about the wonders of a good example. The language needed to present examples is far from difficult. It is in fact the language that we need to explain them that can be trickier. We tend to introduce examples using the classic "for example," or its most frequent variation, "for instance." But we can also use the following expressions to add variety, namely, especially, to illustrate X. If you want to avoid repeating the same word over and over, use the following nouns to substitute example: case, illustration, instance, sample only for physical portions, or specimen only for physical representations. Using a verb to present the example is also a good idea for alternative presentations. There is a safe and large variety of verbal operators to encode examples: depict, exemplify, illustrate, represent, show. Using passive structures to present examples is quite common in speaking as well as in writing. X is illustrated by Y. X is demonstrated by Y. And even more frequent is the resulting reduced structure. As illustrated by Y, X is, does, or functions as. We will now examine how we introduce different kinds of examples in lecture discourse. Examples that only require some sort of simple association from the students tend to come in groups. Typically, we will introduce these examples by means of "for example" or "for instance," and then link them using and or. Although not very common, we might enumerate the examples using first, second, next, as in a series. But this is more common when we're actually classifying information or listing more complex arguments. Examples as explanations are really common in lectures. When classifying, we list items that sometimes we know people will easily relate to, and so we can use examples to explain the categories. Mónica Freixas, also from the School of Education here at UAB, is presenting a classification of personalities that can contribute to conflict. What you will watch is the use of an example as the explanation for one personality type.
The time waster, someone who uses lots of technology, for instance, and spend a lot of time doing things that are not relevant for the work.
Mónica uses the expression "for instance" after she has started describing a hypothetical character using the expression "someone who." Definitions and descriptions are likely to be introduced like this: someone who, for a person; something that, for a thing; a place where or in which; a time when; a situation in which; or a reason why. There are examples that will require more elaboration. Let's now watch Xavi, who links literature, life, experience, and quests.
I would like to focus on one thing. Literature allows us to reflect on people's life through metaphors. For instance, through the metaphor of the journey. And here are three journeys that are worldwide famous. The journey of Indiana Jones, the journey of Huckleberry Finn, and the journey of Holden, the main character of The Catcher in the Rye. The three journeys allow us to think about our own lives because they are very different journeys. One which is a journey of an adventurer who is trying to catch a treasure, Indiana Jones. Another one is a psychological journey, Holden, who is trying to figure out how he is and why the world shouldn't be the way he was told the world would be when he was a kid. And the third journey is that one of Huckleberry Finn, which is a journey where he finds out what love is, the love he feels for his mate Jimmy, who is a slave seeking for his freedom.
Nothing beats the real thing. Whenever possible, bring props and samples to your classes. You should make sure that the perception experience is possible using different senses so that each and every one of your students can have a go at feeling, hearing, smelling, tasting, or seeing the sample or prop. Now, if the props or samples are complex and require detailed descriptions, divide them into sections. I recommend you to break them into 4 pieces and refer to them as the upper left, the upper right, the lower left, the lower right. If describing 3-dimensional objects, you might need to draw an imaginary axis and rotate the object around it. You can refer to the different imaginary or real sections of the object using their scientific names, if they have one, or you can use the words area, part, section, or side. Complex props or samples from which the students are required to identify specific sections should follow a very methodical explanation. Diagrams and illustrations. Illustrations and diagrams can be used to exemplify things that bear to be represented in 2 dimensions. Break your illustrations into convenient sections for their description. Always move forward in the same direction, horizontally, vertically, spirally, in a zigzag, whatever the image lends itself for. Use demonstratives like this, these, that, those. Earlier, we said that nothing beats the real thing. That goes for samples, for props, and also for demonstrations. Examples that are themselves demonstrations are as efficient as unforgettable, especially if students can have a go and try to perform the processes themselves. You can nowadays find lots of quality videos that you can take to class to serve as examples of the very complex contents you probably cover in your classes. When demonstrating processes as an example in class, you will need language related to process descriptions. We'll deal with it more adequately in a separate video. But for the time being, remember these few language pointers. As you perform the procedure, describe what you're doing. Use sequence words to signal to students what is happening first and next. We first do X. Secondly, we do Y. Next, we do Z. Once M is done, we move on to N, and so on. I am sure you don't let a class go by without giving at least one example. Well, now you have the resources to do it in English. See you next time.